start talking, huh? All right. Well, we are creating a video for you guys to take a look at, or anybody who's watching this, just to take a look at some of the work that we do throughout the season with the Tigers, men and women, just in terms of underwater video. We're also going to include a little bit of diving footage at the end too, and go over some of the basic stuff we discuss here. But it's myself, Coach Steve. We got Coach Lyle.
Coach Lyle here. Can't wait to watch some videos, show what we're made of with our underwater footage. Let's get it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So we're going to press play here, and what we can do right away is take a look at some of the stuff. And you know, Coach Lyle did the majority of the work on the buckets this year, and that's what we're doing right here. You know, the kids are on the buckets, working their way through the water. And you know, Lyle, what sort of things were you always looking for on this?
So a lot of what we did was looking at the stroke when you have resistance behind it. So these guys are pulling a good amount of weight. They're probably going for about 10 to 16 seconds based on how many cycles they're doing. And so this is a great look at Kat and Carl, some of our best freestylers on the team. And for this, we would look a lot at their front catch and also the path of their legs. A lot of people will rotate out to the side a little bit too much and kick maybe downward to the side, so it would lose some of that upward vector. And it's to different varying degrees. We sent Kat a note. Sometimes her foot is kicking out and it's just shaped like this. And we had her work turning on her ankles, knees, just in line with her hips a little more, right? Exactly right there. So that she was gripping here that pulled up on the water. That being said, it's probably more prevalent whenever she had resistance on, and it's really good to kind of iron out those little kinks.
Gotcha. Let's just see that a little bit here in full speed. You can see that foot placement right away, just like you were talking about through her kick. Just really awesome flat foot there through what she's doing. You can see that foot is just absolutely perfect right there. Just in terms of that full press and allowing herself to get such a fantastic catch by doing that. And you can see it the same here with Carl as well. I mean, he's obviously focused on the similar thing. And I think that sort of thing is really important. Carl, one of our Estonian international guys, I'm repping one of his shirts here just for the call. But in terms of just the catch work as well, we have a number of other kids as well within this video that you'll see some great footage on specific to their catch. That's Natalie, yeah?
Yeah, it's Nat out to the side over there.
Yeah, so you can see that catch there through her left arm quite a bit. And I think one thing for her was always stroke rate, right? You know, just focusing on that stroke rate, getting good distance. You can see that really great distance. The elbow is pretty high. And for someone who has a pretty insane stroke rate, the importance of catching water for Natalie is just paramount. You know, so we'll just kind of float through some of this stuff here a little bit. Turn the volume down on the video just so you can hear us a little clearer. But you can see here the importance of just the catch work that we're doing. And Helen's one of our graduating seniors, just fantastic catch through what she's doing there. And just take a note as well, Coach Lyle mentioned the hip positions. You know, we don't want to see too much side to side. We want to see everything staying nice and flat through the plane, good rotation through the body. You know, Jack, this is Jack right here on the left.
That is, yes, Jack.
Yeah, and you know, he's someone who can be prone sometimes to a little hip shift. What sort of things were you working on with both Jack and Tommy, Lyle?
Absolutely. So these are guys that probably need a little work and a little more view underwater, and they did a lot of great work based on this power stuff. So they had a little more hip shifting, and a lot of it was based on the placement. I know you work with them a lot, how they anchor their stroke and connect through their core. Jack and Tommy both had a little bit of shifting that would come out with this resistance. So we would watch this periodically, maybe once a week. And they did a lot of great work just stabilizing. We kind of supplemented their core work with this intention to balance. And I think it was a little eye-opening, especially for Tommy, to see himself underwater. But after you see it, it was great for them to be like, oh, wow, you know, like I didn't notice I was shifting that, so that they feel that extra layer of stability and they really made a lot of progress with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see with a guy like Jack here, ever so slightly, you know, he's clearly prone to the hips, you know, allowing his legs to kind of shift here. You know, you want his legs, ideally, you'd obviously want his legs and his kick really coming through this plane right here. But you can see a little bit of a you know, slight angle there through his kick. And Jack's actually a fantastic kicker when it's isolated by itself. But like Coach Lyle's saying, you know, a lot of the work that we're doing here with him is trying to find that core connection and using dryland to really work on that as well. And Tommy, who's coming behind him right here, Tommy's someone who saw about a 2-second drop in his 100 freestyle last year because of these sort of changes, which is just a, you know, pretty large chunk of improvement. And again, you can see how already that hip placement's already looking much better, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah, he did. It did a lot of his would be a little bit of connection. His hands would kind of slide, and we always preaching like once you anchor that water, you want to be very still. You know, we're always working on eliminating wasted motion in all of our strokes. For Tommy, there was just a lot of like little hip swinging that was connected. So once he got a little more stable and anchored, that was key for him dropping that time and really making those improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go Jack and Tommy.
And again, going back to Tommy, you know, just really clear, and Katarina's just so flat and powerful there, and you see that engagement through her lats each time. And so this is just the next phase of footage that we've created here, and this is underwater footage of some 50s that we were doing at our goal pace for the 100 from a push. So we were getting people's strokes as pretty much something about as fast as you can swim within practice, also under a little bit of fatigue as well. What I loved about this video footage as we went through the year was just some of the fantastic behind the summer footage that we were getting coming off this wall. So this is the 25 turn that we're getting for everybody. And you can see for a coach at least, everything we're seeing on the surface, that's great. But when you get this type of footage under the water, it really does add a whole different component to these sets, because we look at this footage usually within 24 hours of doing the set, and it allows us to have a pretty familiar feel of how the set went while we're still looking at it from this underwater standpoint. You know, anything that you'd like to add specifically, Lyle?
Sure. So one thing that I love about this footage as well is that from the back, we were looking at some of the more experienced people versus people that were making improvements, like those breaststrokers, Allie and Neve. We worked on Allie's kick by looking at Neve's kick as a little better. And then, you know, Allie may have some advanced elements. And they were doing so well, we would put this footage out on a YouTube page, and it got to be where they started communicating and helping each other based on the footage, and like, hey, check out my kick. Did it look like the video? Can you pop your head underwater while I'm coming in and give me some feedback? And I think both of our men and women's team really started embracing that and giving each other feedback based on what they had seen on the video that we put out. So great footage. Also, one thing that Steve, that you were always looking at was their underwaters on backstroke, something that is your specialty, how they're coming off of walls. And I learned a lot this year on that. And I think it helped our backstrokers immensely, you know, that they were hooking in and really getting the full range of motion. We were constantly looking at the underwaters, making sure they were so, you know, efficient and propulsive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that's really cool here as well, just to kind of bring the power work that Lyle oversees into this sort of 100 pace work too, is just taking a look at something like this right here. You've got Brooks Curry here off to the left, a guy that pretty much, you know, took the swimming world by storm last year. Here we are talking about that great line that we want through what we're doing. And you couldn't really ask for much better than that. You know, he's got full extension through his right arm while he's getting full press through his left leg. And you know, so it's not a coincidence that this stuff happens. This is stuff that we work on in a very finite way when we're doing our power work. And then we've obviously got this get up and go. And funnily enough, the way we were actually doing the season, we would work on this power work in the morning, and then we would come to this in the evening. So it was really, really fresh in their minds, and they felt really good about what they were doing. So that's just a really key piece of information, I think, just in terms of bringing things together a little bit when it comes to this stuff. But to Lyle's point, the underwaters were also a huge part of the analysis of what we were doing throughout the season when it came to this work and this footage specifically. But it was certainly great for the breaststrokers too, I think, in the sense of just that quality of leg press, like you were talking about, in comparison to people like me versus Ali and whatnot. Yeah, I think the great thing more than anything was that these athletes were trying to go specific times, and they wanted to make sure they were hitting the time, but they wanted to make sure that they were doing it as efficiently and as correctly as possible. So this footage would validate when they were doing things correctly, but it would also be a great way to see why maybe their pace wasn't what they wanted it to be as the season progressed, especially as they dealt with fatigue. This is the last part of the footage. It's the relay exchanges. This is something we worked probably, I would say, 3 or 4 times a week. We were taking at least 10 to 15 minutes on 3 or 4 occasions a week to work on this, because we wanted it to be perfect. There's nothing wrong in aiming for that sort of 0.0 exchange in everything that you do. So I'm just going to rewind right to the start of this and just show you guys, exactly what I'm talking about here. And I'll discuss this from a relay exchange, and Coach Lyle can talk a little bit more about, just the mechanics of the start itself. But one thing that I was trying to really emphasize to our swimmers this year was the importance of the back foot on the block. It should be gone by the time the person's hand is touching the wall. You should not still be in a track position when that hand arrives at the wall. And you can see here that hand has just about arrived. And this was a significant issue at the beginning of the year, was too many of our relay starts, people were touching the wall and 2 feet were on the block. And that was just a thing that we really had to overcome. And confidence played a huge part. So looking at that in the grand scheme of things, our relay exchanges really did excel once we got to the end of the season. But in terms of the mechanics of the start, Lyle, anything that you sort of have been emphasizing?
Sure. So we looked a lot about their line and their foot placement. So I know you worked on the back foot a lot. We also worked on carrying that force through, carrying your center of gravity, your momentum through, and placing it on that front foot and having that front foot grip the front of the block so you could launch yourself in. And then we had varying degrees of angles of people like to launch themselves straight in, whether they like to have more flight. And we would time things to make sure, I think we keep a really good open mind where we're going to time and make sure it's faster. We're not just going to say, oh, it's this or that. And that open mindedness thing and really working peer to peer. So Cameron, this guy right here, more of a breaststroker. He has a little more flight, and then he'll go in a little later. Where Lewis, that first guy, a little more hot. So Lewis would dart into the water, and he was a more underwater guy. So he wanted to get in the water and really use that some more. And I will say our guys' relay, to our credit, broke every single relay record. And this is something that we constantly work on. We were having great splits, but sometimes our relay starts were a little off. And we just honed in on that. One thing I love about the group is that we were working on this stuff from the first week. It's something that our guys are really excited about, our women as well. We're constantly shooting video. Steve and I will both have our phones out and be recording. The swimmers will bring their phones out as well. We'll airdrop them a lot of footage after. So they're just getting constant feedback on their timing. When they're winding up. We talk a lot about that automated motion. By the time we got to SECs, it wasn't a guess. It wasn't a look. It was almost a sixth sense of something that we just built and programmed for so long that they would just rip it. And we had great starts. And I think they really bought in and had a lot of fun working on that all year.
100%. And this is a great example of really where we got to with the start. I was talking about that back foot before. You see here, this is a graduating senior, Matt Klotz. His back foot has now come away from the block right as that person in the water's stroke is at full extension. In my opinion, when you find this sort of position between an exchange, you really are putting yourself in a position where your start will be between 0.0 and 0.01. 0.0 and 0.1. And I think within that 1/10 of a second, if you can keep things within a 1/10 of a second and have a total of no more than 3/10 of a second across all 3 starts, then you're looking at a really elite level relay at that point. So that's as good as it gets. And one last thing, at least for me, is that you'll notice over here in lane 5, you have one of our athletes looking at what's happening. And this was something that became, being students of one another was something that we really started to emphasize. We wanted the athletes to be giving feedback to one another. We wanted them to become experts at what they were doing, so that when it came to this type of analysis, Lyle and I can't watch 25 people doing relay starts. We need to trust that as team members, we have the ability to pass judgment and also, give advice in a way that's going to be effective and comes from a place of knowledge. So we were doing as much as we could to educate these guys so that they could actually educate one another. I think that's a huge part of what we do here. But in terms of the starts, we'll try and let you maybe see one at full speed here at the end. And that's really what we're looking for, that absolute commitment to what we're doing, feeling really good just about, the stroke in general and the start in general. Sorry. So.
Cool. No, I love what you say about the educational piece. And for us, it was so cool because we're learning at the same time, and we're figuring everything out, and can't wait to get back to it.
Listen, guys, we wanted to provide some really cool footage of just this is us. This is what we do every day in the office. I'll be honest with you. So you're getting a unfiltered version of LSU coaching, and from our standpoint, we love doing this stuff. We hope you enjoy at least getting a glimpse of how we work. We call it what do we call it?
The lab.
The lab, man. It's been so long since we were in it, but we call it the lab, and people come in and they tell us a time that they can come by, and we sit down, we go over video, and it's a lot of fun. And it's no coincidence that a lot of the people that came by were the ones that had the success at the end of the year. And so we encourage as many as possible to come by. So any final thoughts, Lyle?
Just kind of what you said, this is one of the most fun things that we do, that we want to provide footage, and this is the future. You need to see yourself. You need to, you guys are visual learners. You're like coming out in touch with technology, and we're staying on the forefront of that. And we love this piece of our job, and come to the lab.
And go Tigers.
And go Tigers. This one's behind me. Ah! Guys right there.
Great. That's the stuff we need to leave in. That's